When did you first notice signs of Alzheimer's in Carol Mitchell?
I'm pretty sure it was 2020, because I think it was summer, and obviously by 2021 we'd quit staying at the house. So it'd been one of the visits where we were staying, and Dad was going to the grocery store. He asked all of us if we needed anything from the grocery store, and then left. And a few minutes later, Carol was just looking around really confused. And, you know, I was like, are you missing something? Do you need something? I just checked in to see, like, what it was. And she was like, oh, I was just looking for your dad. Have you seen him anywhere? And I said, yeah, he went to the grocery store. And she's like, I don't think so. And she literally didn't remember the conversation, that he'd asked us all what we wanted. It just wasn't there.
Did you talk to your dad about this incident?
Yeah. When he got home, it was just a quick trip. When he got back, I pulled him aside and mentioned it to him. And he was kind of one of those stoic guys that, you know, didn't burden you with his problems usually, and sometimes you couldn't get him to talk about things. And he just said, oh, you know, I got it, don't worry about it.
Do you know when Carol Mitchell was formally diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
It was sometime, I'm pretty sure, in 2021. Or, I'm sorry, 2020. I believe the testing started in 2021, and then I think the diagnosis came in 2022.
What kind of things did you begin to notice after you learned of Carol Mitchell's formal diagnosis?
Well, I guess I don't remember which, you know, some of it was before the formal diagnosis. So 2021 was a busy year because Liam joined the family in April, and then they were still coming to visit me, or us, at my house, because we all did a lot of visits back and forth. And then I'm not sure how they all talked me into it. We also had three foster dogs that year, and then I took on a foster baby in August. So I don't think I was paying as much attention as I probably should have been. But the things I noticed were Carol was usually the driver, and Dad was driving a little bit more. She had been staying at the house too when she came along when they came to visit. And by the end of the year, she was convinced one of her cats couldn't be left overnight. And so she quit coming on the visits. Those are the two. Well, just in general, a little shorter, I guess.
Was there a specific incident when your dad visited you in Woodbury without Carol Mitchell?
So just in general, you know, so even when she quit visiting because of the cats, he was still coming to visit, typically about once a month. And sometimes it was never like a week or something, but sometimes it would be 3 days or, he did start, he would always check in and call and stuff and visit with her when he was at my house, but it felt like he was a little more like, I gotta check in, things like that. he got more consistent that the visits could only be like 2 days. Like he didn't want to be gone for more than 2 days. And if it started getting, he just seemed more anxious to get home.
Can you recall a specific incident where he was anxious to get home?
The one I remember the most is, so in early 2023, he'd come in actually for it was my swearing in, and so he was coming in for 2 days for that. I think just before that, there'd been a woman that had gotten lost in Detroit Lakes with dementia, like a pretty serious case where they almost didn't find the person in time. We talked about it, and because it had made statewide news. And that visit in particular, the one right after we'd had all that conversation, I'd asked him if he could just stay the next day because my babysitter wasn't available until I got home from work, and then go home. And there ended up being a bad snowstorm. And so I got home a little late, and I was like, Dad, it's too bad to drive. And he was like, no, I got to get home. And he literally, I don't think it was technically a blizzard, but it was awful. And he left at 8 o'clock at night to drive back to Detroit Lakes.
Did he make it?
He did not. He had to turn around after 15 or 20 minutes. And then he left immediately the next morning.
What did you take from this incident?
My dad's was a pretty laid back guy. And he didn't at least like to show his family he was worrying. And so, if Dad was worried and was showing it, it was usually a sign it was pretty bad.
Do you have any other relatives with Alzheimer's?
Yes. My grandfather had it pretty seriously, and my mom now also is starting to have, it hasn't been diagnosed as full Alzheimer's yet, but dementia.
Can you talk a little bit about your grandfather's Alzheimer's that you remember?
Yeah, it was pretty sad. As he deteriorated, he was getting lost a lot. He thought people were stealing electricity from his house. He kind of lost his best friend because he had a watch that he thought his friend had stolen, and even when you would show him the watch, he would immediately forget it and think this, and if you saw his friend, that was the first thing he'd do, is just be like, you stole my watch. And he forgot my grandmother by the end. And the hardest thing was that he couldn't go to the bathroom by himself even, because there were a couple times he'd gotten into his feces.
You mentioned that your biological mother is either in the early stages or does have Alzheimer's. Are you doing any caregiving for her?
Fortunately, she's got my stepdad there. And my sisters and I check in. I was doing a little bit more last summer, not so much because of the Alzheimer's, but she's also having some medical problems. So she had a knee surgery, and then during rehab, she fell and broke her back. So there were a couple times my stepdad got overwhelmed, and I'd have to call him, or he'd call me, and I'd have to rush over to help him.
How about Carol Mitchell? To your knowledge, does she have any relatives with Alzheimer's?
Yes, One of her parents had Alzheimer's. Her oldest sister, Gigi, who's in her late 80s, and she has it to the point that Carol had told me in June of 2023 that her son lives with her, and she doesn't remember her son. I think she told Carol on the phone, there's just this nice young man that lives in my house. And then her brother Lee had it, I think, pretty seriously, and was in a nursing home and passed during COVID.